Welcome to the Intrusions InDepth podcast. I'm Josh Stepp.
Today, we're switching things up in a more relaxed vibe, diving into questions straight from the community. I'm joined by my good friend, David Sanchez, better known as Ponch. He has graciously agreed to share his unique perspectives and tackle your questions from a different angle than mine. For those who don't know him, David Ponch Sanchez is a security consultant by day, but all-around amazing human being. A retired Navy boat person, Ponch mentors those around him, both professionally and in his free time. He's been in the cybersecurity world for years now, as you'll hear throughout this episode, and I had a blast recording this episode with him. We dive into the Coinbase breach, the ongoing Israel-Iran conflict, and share insights onto how to approach cybersecurity in exchange for $100 bills. That's getting your first job. But first, let's not get sued.
The information presented in this show is sourced from publicly available materials and does not contain any classified or proprietary content. The views and opinions expressed are those of the host and guests alone and do not reflect the official policy or position of their employers or any affiliated organizations. Enjoy the show.
And we're live. Today, I am joined with a good friend of mine, David Sanchez, commonly referred to as Ponch, throughout this episode. And first of all, I want to thank you for being here, David.
It's been a pleasure. I'm honored.
By the time we start this episode, I'll have a proper introduction for you. But in your own words, I would just like you to kind of introduce yourself to the audience. And we'll jump into these AMA questions that I got, which I thought would be fun to do with a friend.
Yeah, for sure. So my name is David Sanchez. I'm retired Navy. Got to go on many mine sweeps, expeditionary, but I was comms the whole time. Left the Navy, went to work at DISA, spent a good 4 years at DISA, and got to learn a lot of the cyber stuff. Got to learn boundary, intel, a lot of the countermeasures, detection engineering stuff, and now I work at Elastic doing the same fun things.
Absolutely. And thanks for that. As we jump into these AMA questions, I picked out 3. We had 6 all together. I just want to give a call out to one of the best screen names. I didn't pick his question, but he had a screen name called Pinochet's Helicopter Tours. Thought that was a very funny name and very clever. If you don't really know what that is, just look up Wikipedia, and I'll put a note in the show note because it's completely off the rails from what any of this episode is, but it was really good. I wanted to call it out, but his question, sorry, kind of sucked, so I didn't go with it. But with that great extra bit of information we didn't need to add into the podcast, I'm going to start with the first question. The first of which was, Coinbase was recently breached by a bribed contractor. What's your thoughts on all of that? And the person didn't leave their name, so anonymous person has asked this. So I'll open it up to you, Ponch. What's your initial thoughts?
So I actually have a lot invested into crypto. So I actually did do some crypto mining. I mined Ethereum, I mined Litecoin, I mined some Helium. And so for me, I've been kind of tracking Coinbase and some of these different centralized apps where they hold coin. So for the last 3 years, I've mined crypto and got into a habit pretty early of keeping all my crypto on cold storage. When the first GameStop crypto thing happened, and immediately I noticed that we couldn't sell our crypto when it was really climbing and you wanted to make some profits, it opened my eyes that I really need to have my own crypto, right? So you need to keep your own keys and, So with that being said, this whole Coinbase thing kind of, you look at what's going on currently politically. Trump had his coin that got pumped and dumped. You look at Melania and her coin that got pumped and dumped. Being aware of where you're doing investments and the risk at where you're doing these investments, Coinbase was at risk, right? It's a huge pot of money, a whole bunch of coins. There isn't really a lot of ways to track where all this stuff is going, and it just took one insider person with a need and access, and it's kind of the landscape for all cyber stuff, right? Need, access, and the opportunity to maybe get away with something, and sure enough, Coinbase got popped. Yeah,
I took this question from a slightly different angle, and I'm going to first say that if anyone's ever listened to my buddy or listened to my episodes, you know that I kind of call this fake buddy. So that kind of, I guess, highlights where I am in the whole cryptocurrency scene. And the fact of the matter is, I probably just got in too late. I was a late adopter. And by the time I was like starting to look at like Bitcoin and everything else, it was just too expensive for me. So when I initially read this question, my initial thought was like, well, that sucks for them. Moving on. But I started to like kind of peel back and look at some of the article, and I think this kind of highlights just another issue with cryptocurrency wallets and crypto, or even anything that's like a value that's like physical, like gold. And I guess it kind of bled into like a different aspect of like with banks, you have like know your customers laws and there's regulations. And like, I know like the appeal of cryptocurrency is like, hey, we're going to be sovereign citizens and we don't have to like follow fiat currencies, and fiat currencies like obviously have their inherent problems. As someone that's read a bunch of like Mises books and stuff like that, totally get it. However, like being a sovereign citizen also requires that like you take care of your sovereignty. Like you have to like be smart and not tell everyone that you have a bunch of money, and B, like keep that stuff secured through there. And Coinbase is in kind of a weird scenario in that there's more stuff being added, like more regulations being added to like cryptocurrencies and trying to make them, I don't know, quote unquote, like more insurance proof or something like that for Coinbase. But at the same time, they don't have like all the know your customers, and they don't have the FDIC and everything else to kind of protect against this. And then by virtue of their model being like needing people in different countries, et cetera. So like labor laws, et cetera. So, I mean, at some point they have to hire contractors, and these contractors are going to be exposed to sensitive work. And I think it's just a matter of time before that happens, because obviously they can't pay these contractors enough, not steal large amounts of money that they see all the time.
Yeah. And the other kind of big thing with it is the anonymity behind it, right? So like, this guy got caught, I imagine, because you're logging into a system and you lose your anonymity, right? But you get all these wallets, and where is it going? Once you transfer those coins, or you sell those coins or whatever, you can dump that address, and unless you're on a centralized market, Coinbase and all these others, there's no real way to track any of that. So I'm sure he thought he wasn't going to get caught.
Yeah, and I mean, you do have like chain analysis and like the people that do like go through and start tracking. I mean, I'm a big North Korean fanboy, so I love all the like North Korean Bybit and like watching them like track how the money's getting laundered through all the tumblers and everything else. So I mean, I've seen that and like how it's moving, and I don't know. I don't think you're gonna walk away from that, but at the same time, I just talk about like kind of how Coinbase came out and was like, hey. I took this down as a notes, but it was like, hey, this is only mass data that was stolen. It's the last four of people's social security numbers, their government issued IDs, their balance snapshots, their corporate training materials, who cares, whatever, and some personal information. And then like the first two was like just screaming out at me like, okay, it's the last four of their social, who cares? Like you could probably get that from any website, etc. But a picture of like someone's ID, like that has like a very critical piece of information on there called like your address. And the balance snapshot kind of gives you a priority list of like, if you were going to impose violence on someone to steal their money, you would probably pick someone that had a high balance snapshot and that you had their IDs. It doesn't really matter how secure your Coinbase password is. It just really is mattered of like how tough you are if people start beating you with the pipe or something until you like log in. And I know that's like pretty crazy, and people are like, hey, that would never happen. But I'll put a link to it in the show notes, but there's like tons of stuff where like recently there's a guy in Manhattan that was like held and kidnapped for like 4 days to get access to like his cryptocurrency wallet. And I think there was like some woman that almost got kidnapped because her dad like owned some exchange in like Europe. And there's like videos on like social media where like the husband was like fighting back and they're all bloody. And then some store owner came out and started beating people with a fire extinguisher. I mean, so, and I think this is like downtown Paris. So it's like, I think that's like where the big issue is like, sure, they didn't steal the information, but it's like, they're not really after the information. They're after the money, and they know where the money is and how much there is. So like, that's what I would be, I guess.
Well, even from an offensive perspective, you've just now created a bunch of targets, right? You don't want to go for the guy that only has $100 on his Coinbase account, right? You're going to go after the big ones. Now you know who you're going to fish. Now you know who you're going to, start sending, who you can make friends with on Facebook just to get connected to him and maybe get access to his phone, right? Coinbase, you can get on, and as long as you can get into that phone, you can buy crypto, you can send crypto, you can do anything you want with crypto, right? And so, yeah, it did create a huge list of targets. And how do we protect those targets?
Yeah, I don't know. I don't think there's from a defender perspective or whatever else. I mean, I think obviously you need to have strong auditing stuff going on and seeing who is accessing said information. And I don't know. I mean, I guess you have to make some type of example out of this person as far as like making them deter this action from going forward. But I mean, I don't know where this contractor was, maybe the article said it, but if you're living in like a country not in the West and they're like, hey, I'll give you 20 grand or something for this access, I mean, that's a good return on investment if you can make millions. And if you're this person that's getting paid $8 an hour or something like that, 20 grand's a lot of money. I mean,
you also look at it from a jail time perspective, right? If they're, in any of these countries that it's not a big deal, right? Look at all the social engineering being done in India and, people targeting IRS scams and everything else, right? If their laws are not that crazy, like they'll get caught and they'll be right back out asking for another job.
Yeah, I mean, or even Russia where they're just like, hey, keep doing it. Have fun.
Yeah, using AI and applying for jobs.
Yeah. Oh, yeah. And I mean, I don't know. I just had like another note on here. It was just like, I said this like in one of my previous episodes, but there was like this dude named Alexander Ermanov that Australia like put sanctions on because he like stole a whole bunch of health data and then released it. And everyone was like, what is like Australia doing with like sanctioning this like stupid Russian dude that's in Russia? And it's like, well, like they paid the ransom, so they like didn't destroy this information or didn't release this information or something along those lines. Like, is Australia just doxing this dude and letting everybody in Russia know, like, hey, this guy has like 20 Bitcoin, go hit him up? And it's like, well, is that worse than prison? Probably. Like, who cares if you're in Russia and you get sanctioned by Australia? But I mean, I don't know like how prominent the Russian mob is. I don't really like hang out with them or ask them too many questions or anything like that. But I would imagine like there's probably some people in Russia that were like, hey, I could probably take that money from that guy.
But then you kind of look at that slippery slope where you see a lot of these guys that get caught end up getting jobs, helping companies defend stuff better. So it's an interesting phenomenon how that happens.
I also just want to reiterate that like I don't think that's a great way to like get your first job. I know like a lot of like younger people in their careers. I have a question on that coming up actually, but I don't think that's the ideal way to get your first job at a company. Like if you're like looking like, hey, I really want to get into cybersecurity, I think trying to pwn them sideways is probably not the best idea. Just friendly word of advice. But it does happen. But you could not be that lucky sometimes. Like,
it makes for a good movie plot, but
yeah. Yeah, I think that's all I have on that question. Do you have anything else you want to add?
No, I'm good. The whole Coinbase thing, crypto.
All right, perfect. Now we're going to move into stuff that's going to get us both canceled. So I appreciate my audience for putting these questions in. The Iranian question. Do you think we see increased hostilities towards critical infrastructure from cyber attacks in Iran? DHS and other agencies have released notices warning of cyber attacks from Iran. Since you're the guest, I'll let you go first. If you want, I'll go first.
No, absolutely, man. Absolutely. And it really doesn't help that they added that bounty, right? The bounty, now people know there's money behind it, right? Like, it really makes for an interesting phenomenon. When you look at everything that has happened from like CISA, and CISA almost losing funding and that program that was in danger. And then you look at the amount of contractors that have been let go at the various companies, Microsoft, CrowdStrike. It really puts us in an interesting position right now where there is an increased incentive for especially any of these people connected with them.
Yeah, I can see that and I can respect that. I think I take a different stance on that, and I think that was good. Like, I'm very glad that I had you on this episode so we could kind of bounce that off of there. But I don't think Iran has the juice to want to do that. I think once the bombs start flying, so they're like, hey, we're going to enrich up to 60%. Israel, the United States is like, hey, we don't really like that too much. And then Iran's like, well, we're going to keep doing this until you make a stop. I don't know. Like, we're still waiting on like battle assessments and everything else. But I would assume flying B-2s over someone's airspace and dropping bombs on their stuff is like a good indicator of like, hey, we kind of want you to stop. I think that's a pretty clear message. And I just don't know if the things that Iran does is worth the juice, like is worth that trouble. Like, so like, look at the critical infrastructure, right? Like, if they break into like a water treatment center in Iowa, or yeah, you don't live in Iowa. I'm not going to say where you really live. I'm not going to dox you, but in Iowa, right? And they like poison a water supply. They flood a dam. They kill, I don't know how many people live in Iowa. All 17 people that live in Iowa. I'm sorry, I'm just joking, Iowa. But like, they do this, right? Like, what's the response to that going to be? Like, there's going to be a bunch of Americans really mad about this, and that is probably going to employ Congress to like, hey, we're going to declare war on Iran, and like now they're going to get like the full experience of the U.S. military, or more than just B-2 bombers. So like, I don't think that's really like what you want in life. I don't know. I mean, I'm not a Iranian Ayatollah, so I don't see that as like being like a great idea. And then the other aspect of it, what if they start like doing like their information operations like they were doing like during the elections and stuff like that? And it's like, well, there's no elections that really matter for like another 3 years. So like, I guess you could jump on like the whole Epstein bandwagon and like do something along those lines. But I don't think like that's going to change like anyone's minds, I guess. So I don't know. I mean, maybe that is like a whole, I'm going to really get canceled now, but this is just a joke. It's not my real opinion, but I'm just saying like, maybe that's like the whole thing of like them claiming it's like a Mossad operation is like, it's all just a big Iranian information op against Mossad. I don't think that's the case, but it just came to me as I was like talking to that. I don't know. I just don't think they have anything that like could really matter on the cyber warfare front. Because like, I see cyber warfare as like, sure, there's destructive parts and stuff, but I don't see like it's really to win hearts and minds, like in today's world. A lot of it's used to like win hearts and minds, troll armies, etc., this and that. And I think like once the bombs start coming, like hearts and minds like kind of chill out a little bit.
We are kind of entering a new phase of this, though. So when you look at the current administration and their on and off again tariff approach, when you look at the current administration and how much he's blasting on Twitter, you know, it's almost like they knew we were coming. Sorry. Truth.
True socials.
How much he's putting out on Truth before, and it's not even Twitter, it's X, but yeah. How much he's putting out on Truth Social, like they probably knew before we got there. But like, I think we're coming into a dangerous phase right now where the current administration and how they've been pushing everything, I think there's a lot of internal people that are probably going to empathize when you look at how much news Gaza is getting right now and the famine and stuff that's going on there. And the amount of people he's pissed off in the US, it only takes, like we just saw with Coinbase, it only takes one person that doesn't like what, you know, the administration's doing and wants to stick it to him, and opens a huge hole that Iran could take advantage of. So I think we're in a dangerous place because the country is so divided right now that it's dangerous.
I mean, I think that's a good point. So I've always thought that like these reports where they were like, oh, there's like some Iranian assassin or something like trying to like kill the president or something along those lines. And I've kind of dismissed those. And I know like people are going to be like, why are you dismissing this? That's serious. And it's like, yeah, I do think that's serious. But I think if you're just blatantly saying this and like the Secret Service isn't like arresting anyone, like it can't be that serious. Or like, are we not supposed to, like, if we do take this serious, like what are we supposed to do? Like Soleimani someone and just like randomly kill some IRGC head person, some Ayatollah, just to like prove a point that like, hey, we're not going to really tolerate like death threats against the president. And then like, who's these assassins? Like, what's their name? Like, and none of this like really comes out. So like, I don't put a lot of merit in that. And then like with these like reports, I just wish, I don't know, maybe it's because I read these things all the time. I just wish they would put like the name of like, what's the group doing this? Like, is this, I don't know, APT 42? Is this, I don't know, Muddy Water? Like, is the, like, who is doing this? And it's like, oh, these are Iranian backed. Well, how do you know they're Iranian backed? And it's like, well, their Telegram message had a picture of the Iranian flag when they were like issuing these threats. And it's like, come on, like, I don't know. It's kind of like when they're like, hey, this post influenced 38,000 people. And it's like, how'd you get to that number? And it's like, well, that's because of the impressions. And it's like, well, that's not a real metric. So I think it's just, I don't know, maybe I'm going to like have to eat crow on this or whatever, but I just don't think that like cyber attacks that can be attributed to those individual groups is probably high up on the list of things to do against the United States. Now, if you're, I don't know, APT, whatever, 42, 35, whatever, the Iranian AP, like there's a bunch of them, but like 42, 35, etc. And you're like looking at like shipping manifests for things going through like the Red Sea, like, sure, I think that could be like a valid thing of like, hey, we're going to pass this along to our friends over in Yemen. They like to fly drones into like shipping containers and stuff. Like, I think there's still like that intel gathering portion of it, but I don't know if they're going to do something that's like really flashy.
I mean, you have to wonder though, right? Like, how many FAA people did we lose? NASA's budget was cut. How much of their IT was impacted by this budget cut? And you look at 33, who normally targets aerospace and these other things. Like, are we more at risk, right? Like, what's that measure with all these people that have been removed, these departments that have been cut? Of, you know, are we still at the defense posture we were 6 months ago?
Yeah, I mean, I think that's a valid question. I guess that's just distinguishing like, hey, are they going to break stuff or steal stuff? I mean, obviously you don't want either one of those, but if you're going to have to deal with one of those, it's probably better if you steal stuff as opposed to breaking stuff, especially in critical infrastructure. I mean, it's all like really crazy, and to like try and put this through the lens of like just kind of cybersecurity and like by individual niche versus what this whole 12-day war kind of proved was that Israel's Air Force, I think everyone kind of knows that like Israel's Air Force and Israel's like intel apparatus is pretty nasty. Like they can deliver a pretty nasty punch. Like I'm not saying nasty and like dirty. I'm saying like they are legitimate, like scary, like crazy capabilities. Having any type of like communications with then if Israel's your adversary and there's any type of communications, I think they've proven that like that's a very hostile ground. I mean, even so much so with like the pagers and like the walkie-talkies, it's like, hey, it's so hostile on these smartphones that we're going to revert back to pagers and walkie-talkies. And that's even more hostile because they have freaking explosives in them. Like, so I think they've proven like, that's very, very hard. But I think on the other side that I don't think a lot of people are really respecting is that like Iran has proven that like, hey, we can take a punch. Like we could regroup and then we can start lobbing hypersonic rockets and missiles back at Tel Aviv. And I think both parties kind of realize that like you really don't want to get into an attrition war. I don't want to see another war, period. But like I don't really want to see an attrition war between a country that has 92 million people and that's twice the size of Texas versus a country that is 6 million people and like the size of New Jersey. I just think that that's not a good recipe. And I think that both parties kind of realize that it's not going to be a walk in the park.
Yeah. When Iran didn't go to the Straits of Hormuz and completely block, like they could have done some damage, bro. Like that could have been a lot worse than it was. You kind of look at what both sides did, like even Israel and the Iron Dome got to get tested and they figured that kind of stuff out. And so like, I don't understand, man. Like, I don't understand why we are where we're at, right? When you look at, Russia, Ukraine, you look at, China and Taiwan, you look at, everything else, like, where are we trying to get to, right? Like, you would think in the end, everything is back to normal. Well, or normal-ish, I guess. They're still, they're still leaning on their ideology and what they want to do. And what changed other than we wasted millions of dollars in ordnance?
Yeah. Well, yeah, I'm with you. And more importantly, hundreds, thousands people died for nothing. Like there's no gain. Like, I don't know. I mean, if it's like 1776 and you're like, man, I'm really tired of this damn king. Me and my homies are going to get together and we're going to go like kill a whole bunch of people in red coats. So like we can live freely and not have to pay taxes to this dude anymore. Then it's like, hey, like this is like a cause, like, hey, we can get behind this. It's all good. But it's just like, hey, we're going to randomly shoot rockets at each other for 12 days and kill a bunch of like civilians. And I don't know. I think about this like quite a bit, and I know this is like getting crazy off the rails for the question. So I'll try to reel it back in. So I watch a lot of this show called Battles BC. It's on like History Channel, but it talks about like Hannibal and David and Moses and like just kind of like battles BC, like before Christ, like that time frame. And like they would have huge body counts, like 30,000 people killed in like a weekend. And like you have to think that like this is 30,000 people killed with like swords and like beating each other with like war elephants and stuff. Like this isn't a drone. This is people killing each other with swords, close combat, etc. But like the civilians, with the exception of like Caesar and Vercingetorix, like we'll table that one. Siege warfare is going to kill a bunch of civilians, but it's like otherwise it's just like, hey, you have your military, I have my military. We're going to show up in a field. We're going to kill it out of each other, and whoever's left standing won this war. And then they get like the resources and everything else, and things kind of move on. And now, like I feel like maybe it's like post World War II, and I don't know. I mean, there's probably civilians getting killed. Like there's definitely civilians getting killed pre World War II, but now it's just like, hey, whenever there's like a conflict or that goes to war, it's like there's an acceptable number of civilians that's like, hey, this is okay for us to kill like acceptable numbers of civilians. And it's like, how do we get here? Like, what? Why does everything have to equate to just like a bunch of civilians getting killed? And this is like very philosophical and stuff like that. Outside of like total war and stuff like that, I just don't understand why this is like such commonplace. Like this is like the common mentality that you have to think of when it's like, hey, we're gonna go to war with someone, and it's like, okay, well, we're gonna kill 100,000 civilians, and it's like, why is that cool?
Yeah, I mean, when you even look at Iran's desire to have a nuclear weapon, like why? Like in this day and age of what we're trying to do as a globe, as an Earth. Why do we really need to keep equipping people with nuclear weapons? Right? Like, is that really in the forecast of us as a society right now, that we still have nations trying to arm themselves to defend themselves and potentially attack others?
That's an interesting, like, I think you could spend like an entire episode on like that whole thought. But part of me like understands the desire to have a nuclear weapon if you're like someone like Iran. And the reason behind that is like, let's just, this gets brought up a lot, so it's not like my novel thought. Look at like Libya. Like Libya gave up their stuff. Muammar Gaddafi, if you're going to die, like that's not the way you want to die. Saddam Hussein, kind of the same thing. Versus like Kim Jong-il, everyone thinks that like they have this like character of him, like from the South Park movies, of like just being this like crazy person and everything else. But dude, I don't think I don't think Kim Jong-un is, I think he's going to die of old age or a stroke or whatever else, like heart element, I don't know, whatever elements he has, like that people are always talking about. But he's not going to die from people murdering him the same way like Saddam Hussein was killed. I mean, unless like a whole bunch of North Koreans like rise up or something. And I think there's something to be said about like storming towards that. And I'm not saying I'm pro people having nuclear weapons or anything else, but I am saying that like it appears that if you want people to not mess with you, that's a good strategy. And I'm not saying it's the right strategy. I'm not saying foreign policy should be dictated around people getting nukes. And I think a lot of times, like even I've read like a little bit of history of all this stuff. But like even like India, like why did India get nukes? Well, China got nukes. Well, why did Pakistan get nukes? And they're like, oh, well, India's got nukes and they're right next to us. We need nukes. And then like Israel, like no one, like they don't have nukes officially, but like I think it's like kind of an open secret that they do have nuclear weapons. And it's like, well, maybe that's why Iran needs nuclear weapons. And then you pivot over to like MBS over in Saudi Arabia, who is a Sunni, and obviously people in Iran are Shias. And they're like, well, if Iran gets nukes, it looks like I need a nuke. And it's like, Jesus, like this is, I don't know. It's a hard problem to fix. And then even with this like war, when you have Dmitry Medvedev or whatever his name is, the Russian guy on like Twitter who just says the most crazy crap, world-class troll. But he's like, oh, maybe we'll give nukes to Iran. It's like, well, no, like we don't want that either. Like, what's going on here? And I just feel like the world's getting crazier.
Yeah, for sure. And then, you kind of look at the debalancing happening with the current administration, right? And Canada's now our enemy. Mexico's now our enemy. The European Union is now our enemy. Like, holy cow, man. Like, this has been an interesting 6 months so far.
Hey, everyone. If you're enjoying this episode, I'd love for you to join the conversation over at IntrusionsInDepth.com. Sign up for my mailing list, and there you'll get exclusive updates and insights straight into your inbox. And while you're there, I could use your help to grow. Tell a friend, a coworker, anyone who would vibe with this podcast. Word of mouth is how we thrive, so let's make it happen.
Let's move on to the last question, which is kind of more in your wheelhouse and mine, but you mentor a lot more people than I do, so let's get over there. It's pretty easy. I want to get into cybersecurity, specifically cyber threat intelligence. I'm currently 22, and I'm in college pursuing a cybersecurity program. What types of things should I look for during my time in college and look forward towards getting a job when I get out of college? I'll start with this one, and then I'll let you pivot in. Sound good?
Sounds good.
All right. Whenever I get this question, I always start with, do you really want to do this? Or why do you want to do this? And if the first like 10 words out of their mouth is money, I usually just say like, hey, this is going to get old like pretty fast if you're just doing this for money. Like staring at logs, constantly learning new stuff, just the grind of like reading all the blogs, reports, feeling like you don't know anything, always having to read like podcasts, technical write-ups, documentation, looking at 27 different places to find the answer, something being different between the different version numbers, stupid bugs like Cisco hard coding credentials, and you're thinking like, hey, this is 2025, why is this happening? And it's all going to get old and very frustrating fast, and then you're just going to kind of, I mean, I joke about this a lot, like with people that I work with. It's like, oh man, be easier just to go be a goat farmer. Like, I wish I was just a goat farmer right now. And then you have to like kind of take a step back and be like, well, actually, like in my free time, I like doing this stuff, or I'm really drawn to this stuff. I've been into computers for a while. I like cybersecurity. I would read these stupid threat reports if I didn't have anything to do. Like, so maybe it is like kind of the right path. And I'll hand it over to you to get your thoughts on that, because I know you actually dabble in this space.
I do mentor. I am part of an organization called Raíces Cybersecurity. And we take, a lot of people that are in college that want to get into cybersecurity. And I run these 10-week programs where I kind of take them through what it means to be a defender. And here's kind of usually where I start them off, right? So I usually tell them to go look at articles, and I'll usually point them to Threat Post, Dark Reading, and Krebs. And then there's Hacker News and a couple other articles, but I'll tell them to at least look at 3 of those. Tell them to pick an article and read the article. And if anything in the article you don't understand, Google it, look for it, look for a YouTube video, and see if it interests you. And if it gauges your interest and you're able to finish the article and you're able to Google stuff and you understand, we're on the right track. If it completely bores you and you have no idea and you lost interest and this just looks like another language and you're instead looking at TikToks, then maybe this isn't for you. So then I'll tell them, after you figured out what you're interested in, or you kind of like these articles, I said, open source is key. I said, start working on something. So with this class, I helped them build their own little Elastic stack, and I helped them get alerts and show them how to generate alerts, and then showed them how to work cases, and then showed them how to, just kind of things for them to understand what it means to be a defender, and kind of walk them through that place. But I guess back to your question, the idea is open source. Are you looking at articles? Twitter or X, as much as it has in controversy, there are still a lot of really good malware people posting on these forums, and they'll put actual IOCs or indicators of compromise, and it's stuff you can actually look for, right? The other thing I'll tell people to try is a honeypot. Teapot is a good one to use, and it's free. And all of these resources that I usually tell people to check out are free, and load them up on your computer and try it out and play with it and see if it's something that catches your attention. The other thing I'd like to tell people is you have to be persistent and passionate. There's a lot of areas with cybersecurity, and I think people, when they get into cybersecurity, have that misunderstanding that they think cybersecurity is one thing, right? And it's not. There's so many aspects to it. Like I usually tell all people aspiring to go to DEF CON, spend the money, just go there, check out all the villages. There's hacking villages for voting machines and medical devices and satellites. And the majority of the people going there let you do this hands-on. They'll bring a lab. They'll let you touch it. They'll let you run code. They'll let you reverse engineer DLLs. Like they let you get into the weeds. So like if you ever had a question about what you might like in cybersecurity, it'd be a good place to kind of get a taste of many aspects of what we can do.
Yeah, I think that's great advice. Like I had in my notes, like for this kind of question, and they did boil it down to being in like CTI, but even like cyber threat intelligence for the people that yell at me for using acronyms. So even within like cyber threat intelligence, it's still very broad as far as like where the skill set needs to be and what a cyber threat intelligence person looks like for like a Fortune 500, for a hospital, for Mandiant is 3 different roles, like kind of what you're looking at and the expertise needed to get there. And I use Mandiant because I think like Mandiant's the best like org for cyber threat intelligence since probably like the APT1 report. The tracking of the ONCs, the clustering. I know some people that like work at Google and work at Mandiant and threat intelligence stuff, then they get it. And I'm always kind of like impressed with listening to like the Defender's Advantage report and stuff like that with the amount of visibility and like tracking infrastructure and everything else. So like that's why I went there. But yeah, so with a few caveats, I have never had like a per se CTI job. I was a cyber warfare operator. I taught these teams. I've taught CTI teams. I've taught CTI keyboard commandos, etc. I've helped them do certain aspects of their job. If you look on my LinkedIn, you're not going to see cyber threat intelligence person. Like that's not me. So I just want to give that caveat that like, I know the people, I obviously make a podcast and everything else, but like, if you want like, hey, what'd you do to get a CTI job? I didn't get a CTI job. So I'm going to caveat that one. But yeah, I am baffled by the amount of people that show up to like job interviews and it's like, hey, do you have any experience with a SIM? And it's like, well, no, because like whatever, Splunk costs money or something along those lines. And it's like, well, there's usually like community versions, etc., and ReSIMs. So like if you're going to get a job at like, I'm just going to use generic names, Paid Sim, or if you're like, hey, Ponch, thanks for interviewing me today. I am really excited about this opportunity at Paid Sim Fortune 500 company. And you're like, oh, great. Can you tell me like some of your experience working with the sim? And it's like, well, this is my first job. I just know what the words or what the letters mean. And hopefully that's enough to get my like foot in the door. And it's like, well, meanwhile, like the next person that walks in and it's like, well, I downloaded this like open source sim, Elastic, because it's the best sim. I downloaded this and I've been messing with this version and everything else. And I understand what alert is. I understand what cases are. I understand like Windows fundamentals, like what event IDs are and certain like that. And it's like, well, that's going to give you a much stronger footing versus just like hoping to like learn on the job. I'm still baffled that it's 2025 and like as much free stuff as there is on the internet, that like people walk into interviews without ever touching what they're trying to get a job for.
And even then are not even aware of tools, right? Like as part of the mentoring thing, I walked them through VirusTotal and I walked them through Shodan and just doing basic OSINT stuff. And there's so many resources out there now with YouTube and social media and everything else that you should never go into a job interview blind as to what this company does, right? Like if you're going in blind, like me as an interviewer, like I'm not going to waste my time. If you're not taking the initiative and the motivation to be prepared for our interview, then, you know. And the other thing you kind of see a lot of people is don't, well, I know they call it a specific name, but don't cert chase, right? Like you don't need to have 50 certs, right? Like we see people with 50 certs, like, do you actually know how to do your job or did you just go through a class and you took a test? They're good to have, but when you start looking for a job, I usually tell people go to Indeed, Glassdoor, look at a junior analyst position, look at the job requirements. If in everything you've studied, trained, looked at, if those job requirements are not something you've actually tried, you're not ready to interview yet. Now you know what to need to look for, right? So you want to get a job at Fortune 500 company and you see this advertisement, look at what the job description is. And if you haven't done it yet, there's plenty of open source solutions. Find an open source solution and practice it. Get familiar with it. Have something to show. The other thing I tell them is when you go to an interview, and let's say you're going to do Fortune 500, if you could have an open source SIM and present it to them. Most interviews are an hour. And if you're able to present your stuff and last 30 to 45 minutes talking about what you did in your home lab, it gives them 15 minutes to ask questions. And then you don't have to worry about getting stumped so much because some interviewers really want to see what you know and they'll ask you really hard questions and other ones, you know. So
yeah, that's a good, so keeping this like CTI focus. When I first started this podcast, like a little over 2 years ago now, which is kind of crazy, I was like trying to look through like kind of honing my research skills and kind of, I'll have like a blog post one day for all the people that keep asking like how I research this stuff. But looked up like kind of how real people do this. And by real people, I mean people that like get paid and stuff. And I came across Katie Nichols, who used to work for Miter Attack, I think, but like is Red Canary. If for some reason Katie Nichols is one of the few people that do listen to this, or you do know that, and I messed that up, I'll fix it in post maybe if I remember. But I'm sorry, but I will link her Medium post, part 1 and part 2 of like being a CTI analyst. And I think like that covers like a crazy amount of information. First of all, like if you went through that curriculum, but it really like highlights like Army manuals. It highlights like mindsets, getting rid of biases and like recognizing this stuff. And that's super important, especially as like a CTI analyst and you're trying to like be analytical and put like confidence levels into things. And then second of all is like learning search platforms and like SQL, BigQuery, something. Just like be able to understand like a search platform and to like look for things, because like once you start getting to like the higher levels of your career or through there, like there's still technical expectations like, oh, you're looking for infrastructure that belongs to APT XYZ, whatever number. Like you still need to be able to like learn how to like pivot, like start looking through like census or something for public SSH certs that are like shared between infrastructure that you can link together, or like shared SHAs or like or SHAs, JAWS and stuff like that. So like that skill set like comes in handy. And as we've kind of been hinting at this, you can start your own CTI stuff and post this on X, your own webpage, something along those lines. Hey, this is the report I did. And I know Katie's stuff has like a few examples of like what this looks for. And like, so do that with your own research and publish this out there for other people to see. And I understand that could be scary. The first of all is like, the good thing is like when you're new, no one's probably going to pay attention to it. So like there's that aspect of it. And two, like you're probably going to be really embarrassed of like my first like few episodes I'm really embarrassed of. But I just tell myself that like, hey, I've gotten better since then. So like this is progress. And if the people listening to that like hate those episodes, like feel free to text me. And if they can't text me, It's because they don't know me well enough for me to care about their opinions on those episodes. But put your stuff out there, get out in the arena. And like when I came into cybersecurity, it was pretty competitive, but it's not anywhere close to like how competitive it is now, especially for like entry level jobs. The elephant in the room that nobody wants to talk about is like the AI aspect of that potentially taking entry level jobs or getting through there. And the best way to like not get replaced by AI or generative AI or LLMs or anything else is to know how to use those things. And I know people like getting a tissy, oh, this hallucinates, what should I use? These aren't very useful, etc. Robots are taking our jobs or whatever stupid advice, but it's like these things aren't going away. So like you can either learn how to use them or you can sit there and be a Luddite and complain about it, but like eventually no one's going to care to listen to you.
But the other thing I think we're losing right now is discernment, right? So I run an LLM here at the house and I play with AI a lot, and I've been playing with Blotato and NA to N and trying to automate some stuff. But people have lost discernment, right? They look at what AI says and they take it as Bible, and they're going to post stuff on it and whatever. As an Intel guy, like, so I loaded up MISP one time, malware information sharing platform. And I started to see, as you connect to other people's MISPs, that their IOCs and stuff would cross over. And if you don't have the patience, the discernment to look at this and see, like, is this a legit IOC or is this Emotet from 15 years ago and I'm just wasting resources on it? That's
or
also
the Amazon
valuable.
S3 cider block.
Yeah. So like, trust, but you got to verify. You've got to look at these things. You've got to see what's out there. Throw any IOCs you see into Virus Total, throw it into a couple different things, but also understand that some of this stuff is very loud, right? So you load some of these out of the box free, Intel add-ons, and it is also gonna, add a lot of noise. But it's a patience thing. It's a verify thing. It's a know what you're looking at thing. And above all, find people or mentors in the industry that you can ask questions on, ping things off of, right? Like I ask you questions all the time, but it's find people that you can get a good answer from, and they're not going to be too condescending, but that'll kind of lead you down the right path, right? And no matter how smart we think we are, there's always somebody out there probably smarter and has probably done this a bunch of different ways.
That's a funny point because I guess we'll go into that forte. I used to be like really hard on like the teams that I would be on in a previous life, but every time we would come back from engagements, everyone was like, oh man, like this team's leveled up, like this team's like on it, like this operation was great, like this engagement was like good and stuff like that. And then I had like a government civilian that went with us, and one of them was like, hey, like why are you so hard on like these guys? And I'm like, well, I'm not hard on like them personally. I don't like criticize them personally. I am hard on their skills. Like, hey, this is the standard that we expect. And I'm not saying I'm like super Jesus, come kiss my pinky at the next conference you see me or anything else like that. But it's like, hey, like I am the technical leader of this engagement and I want us to be operating at a high standard. Because I don't know about you, but I don't like to be around a bunch of losers. And I don't think anyone wants to be around a bunch of losers. I don't think anyone wants to be a part of a team that's a bunch of losers. I try to instill that through there. I'm not saying I'm like Kobe Bryant or Michael Jordan mean to people. And I try to like keep like a positive environment or something through there. But I'm also not afraid to say like, hey, the standard is here. You're not meeting this standard and you need to do XYZ to get to the standard. I don't think people really appreciate that. Like I had mentors coming up through various stages of my life, and I used to always think that like, hey, they were hard on me because they hate me, or they're hard on me because they don't like me or something like that. And then it kind of clicked one time. This is a completely different career field, or this was in jiu-jitsu, but it kind of clicked on me one time where it was like, well, they're hard on me because they want to see me be better. I think that just gets lost on people thinking like, hey, get rid of like who's giving you the message and get rid of the tone of the message and just evaluate, is this the message? And when they're like seeking out mentors, that like, hey, is this mentor just a yes man? Are they like hyping me, being like, hey, you should walk in there and just own the interview, and you should be asking them questions, and you should be rude and interrupt them, and I don't know, establish dominance and stuff. And it's like, no one's going to hire you. You know why? Because no one wants to work with that. Like,
and even with the mentees I did with ISIS, a lot of it was, this is the path, this is what we're doing, give it a try, and if you get stuck, come talk to me. And usually when they come talk to me, I'll be like, okay, what did you try? Where are you at? And like, even with cases, right, they would add their notes on the cases and the threat intel that they got on the cases. And then I would make notes back to them, and they would close them, and I would reopen them and put them notes and be like, try this, check this. Did you look at this? What do you think they're trying to do? To try and encourage that, that imagination, to try and get into the mind of the hacker.
When I have like newer people on board and like work with me and like my current role and stuff like that, one of like the guiding things I kind of talk to them and like their free like kickoff whatever, like we're introducing them something, like when I'm mentoring them, it's just like, hey man, this isn't like McDonald's. Everything's not written out like a manual. Hey, this is how you make French fries. This is how you make hamburgers, blah, blah, blah. You're paid good money to solve hard problems. The harder problems you can solve, the more willingness like people want to like hire your expertise. This isn't an easy job. This is what hard looks like. And like, if that scares you, like, let me know. And get a feel for people. So if you're interviewing stuff, just go in there with like hey, there's a time I didn't know X, Y, and Z, but I built a project so I could learn about X, Y, and Z. And this is what I walked away with learning from that. And that 5-minute conversation about like what you built, or if you go ham into like what you built and like can get into the weeds with like what you did, or I used this algorithm because like this algorithm was different, or I looked at the geopolitics of this situation when I made this determination of confidence levels of stuff. Like, even if you're wrong, like even if you're completely like, there's better ways of doing it, just knowing that like, hey, you have this skill set of like, hey, I have confidence in myself to figure this out. I know how to like figure stuff out, and I can demonstrate and learn by doing. I think it's highly valuable that a lot of people kind of overlook, as opposed to just wanting the easy thing of the manual told me to do this. Like, if the manual told you to do this, and the manual can tell anyone how to do this, and like thus you're not very valuable to someone, and that's not going to get you the 6-figure jobs, 7-figure jobs, whatever intrinsically you're looking for financially. It's not going to get there if everyone can do it. Like, just by virtue of capitalism, supply and demand, whatever you want to call it.
Yeah, 10 certs and no passion compared to a couple certs and a bunch of passion. I'll take passion every day of the week, because he's going to find that bad guy. He is going to find the intel we need. He is not going to stop until we figure this out, right? And that's what you look for. For me to have to go do your job to help you do our job, like, nah.
I think that is all for our questions, and we are good there. I, once again, appreciate you, Ponch, for jumping on here and sharing your insights with me after the end of both of our very long days. Before we go, is there anything you want to shout out as far as your mentoring group, or where people can see you, etc.?
No, I tend to keep a relatively low profile. But yeah, I will shout out ISIS Cyber. Anyone's welcome if you want to come in. Everything's free. Watch some of the webcasts they have, and it's a good group of people. Everyone's volunteering. Everyone's just trying to help each other out, get into the industry.
Yeah, absolutely. And like I said, man, I really appreciate it. Thanks for jumping on here. It's been a lot of fun.
For sure.
All right, see you.
Crank the volume!